Hello and welcome. This is the episode 38 of the Bunker to Bunker podcast. We are joined by Mike Kern, who is I'd say a Philadelphia sports legend.
Ooh,
He worked for the Daily
okay.
News for 40 years and just got inducted in December, I believe, to the Big Five Hall of Fame, which
How
I
about
actually
that?
attended that game, the
Wow.
Temple St. Joe's game. I attended the first or the second two games with
Yeah.
the buzzer beater. I think LaSalle or Drexel beat Penn on that
Yeah.
half court shot, and then the St.
Overtime, I
Joe's game in
think, wasn't it?
Tumbleine.
I think it went overtime or
Yes,
something. Yeah.
yes, yeah. I was in the Wells Fargo Center for a little too long than I thought watching those
My
two
grand
games,
my
but
grandson was there that night. That's how
yeah,
that's how
it was a great game. But happy to have you on, Mike, and thanks for your time.
You know what's weird when you're doing this and you see your face and you say, "My God, really?" That's what because the only other time I see my face is when I look at your shape. My God. Yeah, let's go.
Well, I saw you on Gargano, his new show.
That was
You're talking
fun.
about like the Masters.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I went to Italy last year on his wife's. Now they started a travel company, and it was a long story, but and I just and we ended up going to Italy with them, and we had a great time, and yeah, and me. Aunt and I talk a lot alike. I told people one time, I'll get people come up to me all the time. Yeah, I listen to you on the radio. I'm like, no, that was Aunt. But and I said to
yeah,
Aunt, really, he should have had me on one time for like an hour, and we just could have talked, and people could have tried to figure out who was talking.
yeah. But so I kind of want to get into the golf side of
Sure.
things. You covered golf, college, college basketball, all sports really, football, you name it. But what kind of got you into your career to cover like the golf side of things?
Well, I mean, I was a golfer. That was part of it. And when I started at the Daily News, I kind of got into doing like the guy who was the golf writer, Joe Greenday, legend guy. You use the word legend. He was president of the golf writers at one point. He was known, and he didn't really like covering the women's golf for reasons I whatever. So I started doing like the McDonald's tournament down in Delaware, which was at the time considered the fifth major on the LPGA tour. It wasn't, but it was a really good tournament to
Okay.
cover. And then the Atlantic City tournament down the shore, and then Joe got sick later, and he was going to retire. So in 1990, they needed a golf writer, and I became the golf writer. And I did 25 straight Masters, which was pretty cool. And I missed one U.S. Open because my daughter was graduating from high school, and she had the good sense to graduate the year that it was in Tulsa, and Retief Goosen won in a playoff. So I thank her for that all the time. My other friend, Joe Giuliano from the Inquirer, missed the previous year at Pebble Beach because his daughter graduated. He always brought that up to me, and she missed Pebble Beach. I missed Pebble Beach. You missed Tulsa. I did like 7 British Opens, and as many PGAs. Through and then golf started. Paper business started changing. So when it got to around 2000, we didn't cover necessarily all the majors all the time. And that's just kind of the way the business went. I mean, golf doesn't move the clicks, as you're aware of. But when I covered it and Tiger was, doing his thing, you almost had to be there. I mean, Tiger, kind of saved the golf writing business in the mid 90s. There was a period, I'm trying to remember, after Nick Price won it like 3 in 3 years, there was a period where I think like 16 or 17 majors were won by 16 or 17 different golfers. And golf was
Yeah,
just kind of there. And Greg Norman was a big, but he wasn't winning a lot of majors. And then Tiger came along, and all of a sudden it was like, wow, it was like it was like you had to be there. It was like covering John Chaney in basketball. My editor came up, said, look, we got to be there because you don't know what might happen. And he was right. And that, so the Tiger kind of, for like the next decade or so, perpetuated that,
yeah,
and kind of got golf. And again, I mean, it's what Tiger did. I don't know exactly if it had the impact that, I mean, are there a lot of people of color now playing the game? I don't know. Are there more than are playing it than would have played it? Had he not come along? I don't have those kind of answers. I know he got people. when he was playing, Dick Girardi, my colleague at the Daily News, who I do a show with on Saturday mornings from Parks, he was not a golf guy. When Tiger was playing, he was watching, and he would text me, and Tiger would
Yeah.
do something incredible, and he'd be like, I'm watching this. So, and that was kind of the power that Tiger had, was he got the non-golf people, whether you liked him or didn't like him, uh, into watching golf. And I don't know, who does that today. Who is the guy that maybe makes that happen? I'm not sure there necessarily is a Tiger. Well, there's not a Tiger, but I mean, I don't know if there's other golfers out there. Scotty Scheffler obviously is right now the best, but I don't know if he moves the needle. I don't know if John Rahm moves the needle. Rory kind of moves the needle, but Rory hasn't won a major in 10 years. So,
Yeah.
and so I don't know where golf is. I mean, obviously we have this LIV PGA Tour thing going on that just irritates the hell out of
Yeah.
me, but it is what it
Yeah. I
is.
don't know. I mean, I mean, Scheffler gets criticized for being like a boring golfer. Like I compared him with a friend from CBS Sports a couple of weeks ago, and he said that Scheffler is just Trout, Mike Trout from baseball. It's like, how do you market
That's
this guy with
interesting.
not the biggest like personality? He has
Yeah,
this transcendent talent, but he hasn't had the personality with like the media,
but
like
what
Jordan
rule
Spieth
says
or like
yeah, but what rule says you have to be that? Like like you said, I
he
think
doesn't have to be that.
Mike
Yeah,
Trout's an interesting comparison. So is it enough to be a great golfer? Last year during the FedEx playoffs, Victor Hovland was the best player on the planet for about a month or so. Yeah, I don't know. I
yeah,
mean, does John Rahm? Does he have a, a great personality? I don't know. I don't know like who. Is it better to have a great personality and not win 3 tournaments and 4 starts like Scotty's done? I don't know.
yeah.
Does Colin Morikawa have? I'm trying to think of the guys who've been up there. I mean, it seems like this
I
guy.
mean, for me, it's only Jordan Spieth moves like the way that he plays.
Yeah,
He
but he
moves it.
hasn't been good
I think
enough.
he moves it,
Yeah,
but he hasn't been good.
that's
I mean,
and he's got a wrist
Hamilton
injury
today, he
now.
was everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
Yeah,
trying to think of the guys who are up near the top. See, for me, Rory gets it. I like Rory. I've always liked Rory. I like John Rahm too, but now we only see him 4 times a year. I'm trying to think of somebody. This guy that's coming up, this Oberg, I believe that's how you pronounce it. I love him.
Gobert. Yeah,
I think he's going to be
he's a
really.
stud.
He's got a chance. But again, today, what does being a stud mean? Does it mean you win 2 majors, 3 majors? We see these guys like Spieth hasn't won a major in 7 years. And I thought Jordan, probably would be a kind of guy that could win 5 or 6. Rahm's won 2. Scheffler's won 2. Now he's going to be a father for the first time. So maybe 3 months from now, we're asking what happened to Scotty Scheffler. I don't know.
He hasn't he hasn't won outside of past like the Masters. He hasn't won yet. He's only won at API, Masters, Players, Phoenix.
Yeah.
Like he's only
So,
won those tournaments. So like
yeah,
I'm
but
saying
that's
like
okay. If
past now like he has so much to kind of build even more of like his
Yeah, but he
resume.
only. Yeah, but again, I mean, so Kepka's only won PGA and U.S. Open and hasn't won the other
US
two
Open, yeah.
majors. Okay,
Yeah.
so I'm going to knock him for winning 5 majors. I mean, if you win a Players and he repeated at the Players, so that was his second Players. So if you've
First
won
time ever.
back-to-back Players and 2 Masters in 3 years, I'm going to say what? I mean, I get what you're saying, but it's like Nick Faldo only won British Opens and Masters. He won 3 of each. Seve Ballesteros only won British and Masters. Same thing. Um, some guys win certain majors. Rory's
Yeah.
won 3 different majors, but again, he hasn't done it for a decade. I think golf would really be helped if Rory wins a major soon, and then maybe wins another one next year or something.
Yeah.
But I think he got so caught up, and I give him credit for this, in the LIV thing and protecting the PGA Tour, which Scheffler has done also, and some other guys. But Rory was the guy who was really out there. And I think it
Yeah.
probably took away from his game a little bit because he was,
100%.
putting so much into that. I don't know that for a fact, but I'm just saying is, maybe Rory never wins another major. Maybe so his career, and people will say, I mean, maybe Kepkin never wins another major. Does that mean he had because he won 5 majors and but didn't win 2 of them? Golf is such a weird sport. It really is. There's only so many
Yeah.
Tigers and Jacks and even Mickelson. I'll give Mickelson his due. He was the second best golfer of his
Oh
generation
yeah.
to maybe the greatest golfer ever. Certainly either him or Nicklaus. And it's hard to do that. It is really, really hard to win golf tournaments. I'm not even talking about
Yeah.
majors. I'm just talking about like this week. It's hard. You even see the best golfers on the planet, the Cantlays, the Schauffeleys, you could name 10 guys. They may only
Right.
win one tournament a year or two, maybe.
It's so
If
hard now.
it's just I
The
think
talent too.
it's so deep now. There's so many
Yeah.
guys who, if it's just their week, like Batia a few weeks ago, who I think is going to be another young guy kind of coming up. And then
Yeah.
every couple of years you have a new guys. So all of a sudden the Cantlays and the Schauffeleys are like in their late 20s or 30, and then you got like a whole new group of guys kind of coming along. It's like, Jordan Spieth, I think, is only like 30 years old. I'm guessing. I don't think he's
Yeah.
and yet we think of him as a grizzled veteran. you know,
I know.
and there's always more guys coming. There's always like more guys coming.
I can name some of these guys coming. They're all studs and
They're,
stuff.
they're,
But I
yeah,
do want to get
sure. Go ahead.
yeah. I do want to get into your career, especially when you just
Why?
came off like the Masters, because you got great story. I mean, you said that you have covered it for 25 years. You only missed one like U.S. Open.
Yeah.
A lot of those, I didn't grow up in the, when I started to watch golf, it was when Tiger was like hurt. I do like remember 2019,
Hmm.
obviously, but kind of from your perspective, like covering like the Masters, like what are like your favorite memories of
Well, I mean, there's
covering like the
geez, God.
Masters specifically?
Well, one time I was down there, and you have to understand, Augusta, Georgia, is it's a big town. I think it's the third biggest city in Georgia, but it's kind of in certain respects, a nothing town. I mean, Washington is it? No, yeah, Washington Lane or the main street there, kind of where Augusta National is. You're just driving and you're passing like chain restaurants and this and little malls, and all of a sudden there's Augusta National. It's kind of like ugh, and like the hotel room that we stayed in, like let's say it was like 150 a night going back, it might have been $29 the other 51 weeks of the year. And I was there
Yeah,
one year, and I was talking to my friend back in the office. I was complaining about something. Yeah, look at the hotel, look at this room. It's a piece of crap. It's this, and he goes, "Where are you at?" I said, "What do you mean where I'm at?" He goes, "Where are you at?" I said, "I'm in Augusta." He goes, "Shut up." And he was right, because Augusta was like, I know a lot of people who covered U.S. Opens and PGAs that maybe never got to Augusta because it was just a little, it's the ticket that everybody wants to go. And I actually got to play it twice because I got picked in the lottery. So I
oh
played it twice. And yeah, it was a dump, and and that was like the tournament where you spend a day saying hello to all your people you hadn't seen since the previous August or
yeah,
whatever. But yeah, I mean, Augusta's Augusta. There's not, because you go there every year. If we went to the same U.S. Open spot every year, you would think that's the way. Some people think about Pebble because they see Pebble every year on TV. And I felt, me personally, that my two favorites were the Masters for obvious reasons and the British Opens, because the British
yeah,
Opens are just different. You're over there, and you're in and it's just a different golf tournament. It's a whole different attitude towards golf. But I mean, like I was fortunate enough to win some national awards, and the ones I won for, one was the '97 Masters where Tiger won his first. So I mean, everybody, there's probably 100 Tiger Woods stories that went in that year. I
yeah,
happened to win. I did a 10-year retrospective in 2007, looking back at it, and that story won for. And then the two U.S. Open at Torrey Pines, where Tiger won on one leg, over 90, which I still think is look, I covered the Duke Kentucky game in 92 here. I covered the USC Texas game in 2005 or 6, January of 2006, I guess. Probably one, maybe the greatest football game or one of them, college football game, one of the greatest, I think, college basketball games. And the Tiger Woods winning that in 2008 to me is just, the guy was playing on one leg and he had to play 91 holes. And he came to the 18th hole 3 straight days trailing and made eagle, birdie, one, two, take tie for the lead, I believe, on Saturday, and he'd never lost a major at that point where he held or tied the 54-hole lead.
Yeah.
On Sunday, he's got to make that putt to get into a playoff, right? Which most
Right.
people wouldn't make. And then on Monday, he had to make the 2-putt birdie to extend it to the 91st hole. I mean, it was just, covering Tiger was just nuts. But I covered some great Phil things too. I mean, I saw him win 3 Masters, including the first one, where my editor, my Caesar Alsop, great guy, you would have to know. So Phil wins, and he gets on the phone, and he goes, "Do you got a column in you?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, we got an extra back cover. So can you write your lead and a column?" And I wrote a column in like 45 minutes, which and I'm just, and it was about Phil being a great father from the '99 Open where he had lost to Payne Stewart, and Payne told him to go be a great
Yeah.
father because he's and all that. I mean, look, I covered some things. I mean, I covered John Daly winning the British Open
Yeah.
and John Daly winning the PGA in '91 when none of us knew who John Daly was. He's a ninth alternate. He got into the tournament and won. And something. Look, I mean, if I thought about it, I mean, I'd have to sit here. I'm sure there were some other great things too but I mean, you covered Tiger Woods. One of the great, if you're doing a top 5 or top 10 list of greatest athletes of all time, he's going to be in there, I think. Or,
Oh yeah.
got, him and Jack Nicklaus, and that doesn't even throw Arnold Palmer into it. But I mean, I was there. I mean, when he was playing the tooth playoff with him in, why can't I think of his name? The guy
Marco
from
Mediate.
Marco Mediate, yes. And there were about 6 or 7 of us golf writers. We're standing like 15, 20 feet from where they were. We could hear them talking, their conversations, the whole thing. And I'm thinking, like, wow, like this is pretty cool. And we got to do some pretty cool stuff. It was
Yeah.
it was a job, but it wasn't a job. I said that about the Big Five Hall of Fame. I said
Right.
was never a job, even though it was. And there were times you had to write a story on 15 minutes. You're sitting there just going, hoping your computer don't break. But at the tooth
Tough.
open, so Tiger, he makes the putt. Then now they're going to play on Monday. So what you had to do, you had to write a quick story because we had an early edition. And this is like 10 o'clock at night because we're on West Coast time. So I write, and then I got to
Yeah.
go write something better. So I go and write something better, hopefully, send it in. And again, my guy gets on the phone. He goes, "Mike, you sent the same story." I'm like, what are you talking about? Because it's the same story. Something happened with the computer. I don't know what happened. I'm like, "Oh, really?" So I had to go back in like 15 minutes or whatever the heck it was
Oh.
and write the story again and try to remember what I had written. And those kind of things didn't happen very often, but it was kind of important that I got the Tiger Woods is in a playoff story. And so, and then the story I wrote the next day
It's
actually
crazy.
won. Yeah, the story I wrote the next day when he did win actually won the award, the award. So, I mean, but I get to cover stuff like that, I mean,
Yeah.
how many people get, I got to see John Chaney uh, go to 4 final eights. I got to see Villanova, Jay Wright win a national title. I was there at the first one, and then I left the paper, and then they went on and won the second one. But I mean, who does it? Who gets to cover that?
So like,
Pretty,
what's your favorite sport to like? Is Prime Tiger like was that your favorite time to cover a sport? Was like Prime Tiger or
well, I knew if covering Tiger, people were going to pay attention, right? So you
yeah?
knew, and back then the big deal was to be on the back page of the Daily News. If you're on the back page of
Okay.
the Daily News, that means okay. And Tiger was on the back page of the Daily News a lot. John Chaney would make the back page of the Daily News a lot. Um, but I remember the one year, it was '05. So Tiger's playing Augusta, and oh God, Chris DeMarco, great guy, finished
Okay.
second in
Yeah.
3 majors. So on Saturday, and that was the year where the ball fell, the Nike ball kind of sat there for 3 seconds
Yeah.
on 16 and fell. But anyway, Saturday, Chris DeMarco's winning, I want to say by 2. He's beating Tiger by 2. So I write, hey, Tiger Woods is probably, he's in position to win the Masters. And he hadn't won the Masters in a few years because he'd been in that slump in '03 and '04 where he changed his swing.
Yeah.
So anyway, and my friend at the Inquirer, Joe Giuliano, he read my story. He goes, you can't write that. You got to. And I'm saying, Joe, what are you talking about? Joe's one of my best friends. I said, Joe, no, I wrote, and then Tiger, he goes, no, he's leading. I said, Joe, if he was leading by 5, okay, whatever. I didn't shortchange Chris DeMarco, but Tiger Woods, it's Tiger Woods, Chris DeMarco. So I get home after, and on the Saturday Daily News, Tiger's on the back page. And my editor came up to me and said, hey, that was great. He wrote that. They didn't care. And that was kind of the thing at the Daily News that we could kind of get away with more than maybe the Inquirer could, because we were more of a, I don't want to paint this in the wrong way, but they would let us do things sometimes that maybe we shouldn't have done or whatever. But so I wrote Tiger.
Yeah.
Tiger winds up winning, and I get a thank you when I get home. I remember it was fun in 1990, the Ryder Cup at Kiowa, which was a big, big, big deal. You might not remember it because obviously you weren't around, but it was the Europeans had won like 3 straight times, and it was very contentious. It was, as this kind of the Ryder Cup has stated, but it was nuts. And I went to our boss. Can we go to the Ryder Cup? Nah, I don't think so, because it was on a Sunday in September. I don't know if the Eagles were playing that day. I
Yeah.
don't remember that. Asked him again. Nah, I think we'll pass. Okay. Finally, I went a third time, and me and Joe Giuliano said, "Look, we'll get we'll get a place together. We'll rent it. So we'll cut back. It won't cost you a lot to go there." Okay. So we finally get the okay. We go. The U.S. wins when Bernard Langer misses a putt at the end. Big stuff. Get home. Monday's paper was Dave Stockton, the U.S. captain, getting dunked in the Atlantic Ocean with holding the cup. This is the back page of the Daily News. Wasn't. And I got home and I said, and they were like, "Oh, that was really cool that we were there." I said, "Well, I had to ask 3 times." But again, that was golf in '91,
Yeah.
and those kind of things happen sometimes. But then it was funny when I remember when she announced she was going to play, or they made the announcement, and I went into my bosses and I was kind of joking. I said, "Hey,
Yeah.
you want me to go to Fort Worth?" And they were like, "Yeah." I was like, "Huh?" And so I ended up going to Fort and turned. I mean, obviously that was like a big deal. And I
Yeah.
didn't want to go at first. I didn't want to go, and then but when I went, it was really good, and I'm glad I went. But it's just there's so many stories, where you just think back and you're like, okay, and they happened, and you were there, and
Yeah. I do want to ask
yeah,
about. I do want to ask about 23rd US Open
oh,
at Merion, since that's
best
in
thing.
our backyard. I want to ask
It,
about
it
your experience there.
it was maybe the hardest. How can I put this? Every time we would go to majors for all those years, and you would see what the papers in those cities did.
Yeah.
Everybody would put out you know, I thought we put out one of the best ones. Now we didn't win the award, and the reason apparently we didn't was they told our editor you had too much in there. I'm like, huh? Like what? Okay, whatever. But it wasn't just the week of, but it was like the 3 months leading up to it. And the Inquirer did the same thing. The Inquirer, we were both doing, stories. I remember, we talked to Lee Trevino, we talked to David Graham, who won there in '81. You had to come up with all these story ideas to fill with, and so we did them, and you'd have these stories, and then from like the third, because we got a lot of rain that week. I don't know if you remember, and it was just screwing everything up. They were talking about what they
Yeah.
might early in the week. But anyway, and we had like 5 or 6 people out there every day. And I probably had the easiest job because I was just writing the lead story. We had people running all over the course, following this guy, following that guy. And I
Yeah.
kind of had to sum it all up, which, yeah, it had its pluses and minuses because the first couple of days we didn't finish. They didn't get done so you were always writing a story about an
Yeah.
uncompleted round. But it was just so rewarding and fulfilling to do that week with all those people there helping, and just to do it, to say we did it once. That was the only time
Yeah.
I've ever covered a hometown major in my career. And I remember, I'll never forget, they put my one friend from Toledo. In fact, a couple people actually came up, and they came up and they looked at me and they said, "My God, what a great job you guys did on that book." The pre. And I say, "Hey," and you really appreciate it because being the hometown guy, when you're the out of town guy, it's not, whatever.
Yeah.
You're there, you're writing your. But when you're the hometown guy and people are reading your stuff every day, and and you're trying to choreograph the whole thing, and then we didn't get Mickelson, which obviously would have been the story everybody wanted, but it
Yeah.
was a great tournament, and Merion held up, which was, I heard people were worried about, I said to a Merion member, "What do you think they're going to shoot?" Because I said, "So let me get this straight. So if God forbid somebody shoots 8 under or whatever number you want to throw out there, I said, are you going to wake up the next day and not be the sixth ranked course in America because of that?" And they kind of looked at me funny. I said, "No, you're one of the great courses, not only in America but in the world." And now they're going to be back there in 2030, which they should, because that's the anniversary and then
Yeah.
they're coming back in 2050, the anniversary of Ben Hogan. I think there's another, they're doing something that they're 26. I think the amateurs there, the women are
Yes.
having the women are having something there in the 30s or the 40s. So, because that's how they do it now. They do this thing. So Marion's got like Merion, I say Merion. They got like five, I think, majors, five championships
Yeah. Yeah.
coming in
Yeah.
the next 20, 25 years. And that's great because Merion should be. If you said to me tomorrow, I have one round of golf that I can play, and it doesn't involve getting on a plane and traveling halfway around the world or something like that, I'm picking Merion. That's just me. A lot of people might pick Pine Valley. That's fine. Pine Valley's, whatever. Merion, to me, it has so many ghosts, so much history, and I can play it a little bit. I can still, there's some holes there I can kind of play and have a chance. I played there one time, and I don't play, Marcus Queensberry rules, but whatever. I played there in a thing with a friend, and I
Yeah.
actually made like six pars or whatever because back when I could play a little bit. It's not. It's. I asked Jack Nicklaus the greatest description that year. How would you describe Merion? Sum it up. He's like, well, there's six holes that you can get, six holes that are going to get you, and then there's the other six. And I thought it was like the perfect description of a golf course.
Yeah.
And the closing five holes are. I'm not saying it's the greatest closing stretch but find me a better one. It's all the closing five holes, and Aronimink, which is obviously another great course, is hosting the PGA, I believe, in 2 years. That sounds
2026
right.
PGA.
26. And
Yeah.
it was
2026.
supposed to host, Merion and Aronimink were supposed to host majors in 92 and 93, I believe, if I have my years right. But they had to give them up because at the time they didn't have minority members. And at that time, that's when all that stuff was going on. And so Merion had to back out, I believe, of the 92 Women's Open, I think it was at the time. And Aronimink had the 93 PGA. My friend actually had a shirt, a 93 PGA shirt, because he knew the pro. But obviously that's a collector's item. But so yeah, but I mean, look, Philadelphia's one of the great golf regions in the country. Chicago's a great golf region.
Yeah.
New York obviously is a great golf. Philadelphia doesn't have to back down to anybody. I mean, if you even go, you include Saucon Valley, which is about an hour away from us, but that's hosted
And cricket.
events. And then you got Pine Valley right across
Yeah.
the river. I'll put Pine Valley and Merion as a twosome up against any two that any other city's going to throw at me.
Yeah. No, it's I was 13 in 2013, and I was playing like a baseball tournament. So I do remember the rain.
Did you
In
get
the
out? Did you get out
semifinal.
there at all? Did you get out?
No, no.
Okay.
My dad and his friend drove their bikes because I live in Wynwood, so
That's
going
actually
to
not a bad idea.
Marion, because like the whole concern during that week, it was like, where are
Oh,
people going to park and train and whatever. So my father and
that's
his a close family friend were like, let's just go there and bike. So they might have got like dropped
yeah.
off halfway, but they biked over. But Merion, I haven't played at all, so it'll
Are
be a
you
treat.
a golfer?
9:30.
Are you a
Yeah,
golfer?
yeah, yes,
Marion, to me, like I said, Pine Valley. I played Pine Valley twice, not in a long time. It's awesome. It's Pine Valley. You're playing the number one ranked course in the world, you know.
yeah,
But Marion to me is just, it's almost perfect. And you won't find, it's 126 acres, I believe.
yeah. It's not big.
126 acres. You couldn't build Marion today, probably. There's some quirky
No,
holes. There's some monstrous holes, but you got the Hogan thing on 18. You got Jack and Lee Trevino in a playoff in 71. You got Bobby Jones in 1930, the plaque out on 11. I mean, it's just to me it's perfect. But that's me,
I'm surprised.
you know,
I'm surprised they haven't gone there in forever. I think the USGA has been not
logistics.
scared, but yeah, like we're in a technology age where these huge like driver heads, where you don't have to hit it on like the center of like the club face to hit it 300 yards straight, and the technology, which is a huge topic now in golf with the
Yeah,
USGA and
but
the
I don't even
R&A or
think it
roll
was
like rollback,
that was look, what was the winning score it was even
couple
par.
over. Oh, even it
It
was
was I
even.
think it was even par. I think Justin Rose actually either shot even par or one over. I don't
It was
but what I'm
even. Or
saying
yes,
is,
yeah.
but again, if they go there and shoot 6 or 7 or 8 under, so what? What does that mean?
It it
Does that
it,
mean it's
it doesn't
not
matter.
good? When they shoot 15 under at Augusta, do people say, "Oh my God, Augusta sucks"? I mean, everything's relevant. You can go to St. Andrews, and if the wind is blowing and all over, the winning score might be 2 under, 3 under. If you go there and there's no wind, they're going to shoot 15 under. That's just the way it is. The
Yeah,
problem with
I agree.
Marion the problem with Merion is logistics, the parking, all that. Like you just said with your dad biking there, that was the problem. And Haverford College saved them because Haverford
Yeah,
College they reached an agreement and that bailed them out. I think there should be an open at Marion every 15, 8. They shouldn't go there as often as maybe they go to Oakmont because Oakmont's probably the quintessential, in my mind, U.S. Open course. Then there's always
that's next
oh
year.
God,
Oakmont's next year.
Shinnecock Hills is another one.
Yeah,
They're going to go to Pebble because that's what they're going to do. But Marion is great. And again, but if you can't, when they had at Marion, I'll bet you they had, let's say, 20 to 25,000 people there on a daily basis. When they go to Pinehurst, they put 50 on it. So there is a
yeah,
monetary, since the U.S. Open is the only USGA event that makes money. All the other 12 or 13 championships they
hmm
do don't make money. So the USGA is kind of taking a little bit. I'm not saying we should feel bad for the USGA, but it does take a little bit of it. But if they're going to go there in
yeah.
30 and they're going to go there in 50, and they're, I don't know, that might be the two men's opens. But again, that's fine by me. You're not going to go there all the time like you do with some of these other ones that go maybe every 10 years. It just isn't going to happen. But the fact that
Yeah.
and look, we all knew they were going to go there in 30 and 50. They had to. There was
Yes.
no, and
Yeah.
apparently in 13, what happened was the country club up in Boston, where Francis Ouimet had won the 2013 U.S. Open as an amateur by beating the two great British golfers, Varden and Ray. They wanted to go there to celebrate that anniversary, but apparently they wanted the country club to do 3 or 4 things, and the country club didn't want to do them. I think they might have got the amateur that year. I'm not sure exactly how it worked. But Marion's Marion. You can't do much to
Yeah.
it. You can't really lengthen it. You can't, the greens are what the greens are. They can be very hard. I mean, I saw guys making, sixes on short par fours because they missed the green by a foot and they were buried in the rough.
Yeah.
So I think Marion's a great. Look, it's always the sixth or seventh ranked golf course in America. Uh, my personal favorite. But again, there
Well,
may come a day where 15, 20 years from now, where they are hitting the ball so darn far that it may be a problem. But again, if you go there and shoot 10 under and that's the winning score, who cares?
yeah.
So what?
I mean, it can be a problem, but Marion gives you a different test. It's like So what? You don't have to hit like a driver like 300 yards. Like go hit like a 3 wood straight, and then play from there. It's like I think people get too caught up with the length of a golf course, but don't really care about like the
Well, because
beauty of a golf
that's
course.
the world we live. That's the world we live in.
Yeah,
I mean, I saw Sergio hit two balls out of bounds on 15, which is a par four with like, okay. So if it's an easy hole, and I'm not saying, I don't mean that's an easy hole per se, but he did hit two
yeah,
balls out of bounds. Number two is the same way. The par five, you can hit the ball out of bounds to the right. The number 11 hole, which is the greatest short par four probably in the world, and it's like 300 and I don't know what it is, but you can hit the ball in the water easily. So Merion has a place, just like Oakmont has a place. And of course,
yeah,
that demands a lot of length has a place. I'm not saying they don't, but you know, golf is about history. That's
yeah,
what a lot of golf, how does the past tie into the present? And that's what Merion is. It's the past tying into, and they're going to be fine. It'll go there in 2030, and I mean, I don't know what the conditions will be or what they might, but it'll hold up fine. It won't get torn apart, and if it does, like I said, it ain't the end of the world. As long as they have the logistics to put, like the media, they didn't even know where they were going to put the media in 2013. We ended up on the
yeah.
course. The rumor was we were going to be on the West course down the road. Yeah, there are inherent problems with almost every place you go. It just is because of the meet where you're going to put these people, those people. I mean, I remember talking to Dave. I think it was David Graham in when I did the story before, and he said something about the clubhouse. I said, well, David, they're not using the clubhouse. The clubhouse had to be used for something else. So the players were actually down on the West course. And he said to
Oh,
me, "You're kidding me, right?" I said, "David, no, because Marion has one of the great clubhouses on the planet. You walk in and you walk up these steps to the locker room, and it's just there's all these pictures, and you get up to this locker room, and it's just, you have to experience it. Uh, but
I'm
again, they
jealous.
didn't use
The
that.
more and
They
more
didn't
you
use
talk
that for
about
the
it,
players. What's that?
I'm just I'm like jealous. The more and more you talk about like Marion, the more and more I want the 2030 U.S. Open to be here, or a family
It's going to
friend
be.
or two that I know to bring me on.
Well, I mean, it's going to be here. I mean, there's no, but I mean,
Yeah.
you could get out there, and I think the 26 amateur is there, if I'm not
Yes.
mistaken.
Yeah. It
So
is.
get there during the amateur because you'll be able to actually see things, and you
Yeah.
can go to the amateur because I think they just let everybody in. I think you just kind of show
Yes.
up,
Yeah.
and I mean, I covered the
That'll be
amateur
sweet.
there in 05. It was great. It was, and then I covered the Walker Cup there in 2009, I believe it was. Yeah, that sounds right. Where Ricky Fowler
Yeah. Is
was
that
like
that
the best
Fowler and DJ?
amateur on the planet. Excuse
I
me?
think was Cousin Johnson on that team
He might have
with
been, but
DJ and like
Fowler was
Webb.
the star.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Fowler
Because
was the
Fowler played
guy.
in
No,
two.
no, no.
Two of them.
Dustin, I think, was a pro by then. He was because he
Okay.
lost the 2010 PGA when he grounded his
Okay.
club on the. Yeah, I don't think Dustin, but there was a couple other really good amateurs on that team, but Ricky was the guy. He was like the guy. He's going
Yeah.
to be the next great guy. And yeah, I would definitely go out there in 26. Because because the crowds won't be as big. You can see the course.
Right. Yeah.
It'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah. I'm happy that we're finally getting majors and other amateur tournaments here because since I've really have followed golf, there really hasn't been much. I mean, I think Merion hosted the Curse Cup of the amateur women, or
Right.
a couple of years ago. I
Yeah.
wasn't home
I mean, Saucon
for
Valley
that.
had a senior open a few years ago.
Yeah, I was in college for that. I think.
Yeah. I mean,
I think I might have been
there's
at Penn State, but I'm happy that they're coming to town the next couple of years, which will be good for
well, you can only come so
our
often.
city.
I mean, if
Yeah,
Aronimink coasts this PGA and it goes well, which I have no reason to believe it wouldn't. I'm sure it'll probably try to come back to Aronimink, but it won't be for probably another 12 to 15
yeah,
years. That's just because everybody wants to host it, and they're going to go to certain clubs, and then they're going to try certain new clubs. I mean, look how long it took Aronimink to get this. They were supposed to have it in
which is considered
'93.
it's considered one of Tiger's favorite courses.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's
Ironically,
a great course. It's
yeah.
but again, it takes it's been a long time since they had a senior tournament in Aronimink, and then they had a FedEx playoff thing. I think in '16, I want to say that Bradley
Oh no,
Keenan
no,
won.
it was 2018.
Okay,
Yeah,
well, was it real?
Keegan,
Okay, good. Keegan
because
Bradley,
I
but I
that was
thought
my
I
freshman
covered
year
it.
at Penn State. I couldn't be there.
You might be right because I left the paper in '17. I thought I covered it, but maybe I covered it for somebody. I don't know. But anyway, it comes around. It's just you're not going to. Even Oakmont doesn't get an open every 5 years. It just doesn't happen. Pebble's like once every 10. Oakmont's like once
Yeah,
every 10. That's
they
just
have
the way
those
the
like
world
same eight
works.
courses. Yeah.
Well, because that's why I mean Muirfield over in Scotland. Muirfield's a lot of people will tell you Muirfield's probably the best course. They only get it like every 10 because they don't want it. The only one that gets it, St. Andrews gets it every 5 years. And that's the way it probably should be because it's St. Andrews. But, it's I have no problem with how they've done it. It's just that you're young, you haven't seen it. So, I mean, I've seen it. But it'll be fine.
Oh,
And if it goes well,
I
we'll
get
come
it.
back.
I get it. I mean, 100% to rotate and showcase the courses that we don't see every year. It's pretty sweet, but I'm just happy and I guess a little too excited to get my boots on the ground for everything. But
Sure.
I guess my final question for you is like, what? I guess you already talked about like your favorite course, but kind of like with your time covering golf, like what was like the most rewarding part of covering golf that like you didn't talk about? Because like you kind of said like it like it is work but not work, but like was there some sort of rewarding factor for covering golf for all those years
Well, I
as
mean,
like a usually golfer?
as I said, somebody, Jay Wright asked me, a couple people, what do you miss? I said, it's the people. It's the
Yeah.
relationships. It's not the games per se. You cover some great stuff, and that's wonderful. But and you get some great stories. But at the end of the day, it's that I can't be there with Jay Wright when we're just BSing. At some point as friends, not as writer
Yeah.
anymore. It's the people you meet, the other writers, the travels, the places it took me to. I'm not. I would have never gotten to St. Andrews. Probably, I'm guessing. I never would have got to a Ryder Cup. I never. It's the things that kind of come with it, and I think most writers, if you talk to them, would probably say the same. Yeah. Look, it wasn't interviewing Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods. First of all, I never interviewed Tiger Woods. Well, one time I did when he had his tournament here. We all got 7 minutes in a room, but it was I mean, it was great moments that you would cover, but sometimes you'd be at a tournament where nothing really
Yeah.
happened, or Retief Goosen won, and you got to make him sound good. And I don't mean that he just was that wasn't his thing. He was a great guy with won 2 U.S. Opens, so but again, it's just it is a job, but at some point, I didn't think of it as a job.
Yeah.
You think of it, I mean, some of the Final Fours I covered, or the regionals, or whatever, um, and then even some other things that weren't necessarily college basketball or college football or golf. Some of the feature stories you would do where you got to meet people and tell their story that was really, like one of the last things I did, and it won an award. Nate Blackwell would have been the next coach at Temple in all likelihood when John Chaney
Uh-huh.
retired. And Nate had some issues with addictions. And, I waited to write the story for about 11 years, 12 years, because he asked me, certain things. And then we finally sat down not long before, a year or so before I left the paper, and we wrote the story. And it was just, really came out good. And I kind of told his story. And when you do things like that, it's just neat.
Yeah.
It's not every story you write is going to be great. Not every story you write is going to be memorable. But the thing is, to the people that you wrote it about, I never forget. I had a kid come up to me. I wrote the story about. He was a player at. I'm going to get the college wrong, but it was one of the local small colleges, Division II, Division
Uh-huh.
III, whatever it was. and he was a father. He had a child, but he wasn't married to the girl, whatever. And he was working down at the airport when you go through security. He was one of those guys. And I wrote this. It was a neat little story. You know how well he was doing, trying to make a life, and all this kind of thing. One day I'm at the airport. I'm going, I'm going on a trip. Mike, hey, remember me? And it was him. We talked for like
Yeah.
5 minutes, and hey, how you doing? And one time I did a story about a kid at Holy Family, which is right up the street
Yeah.
from me, and he how he'd gotten to Holy Family. It was amazing. He was from like Southwest Philly. He had no idea what Holy. He took a bus or a train or whatever, and walked into the admissions office and said, "Hey, I want to come to Holy Family and play basketball." And the coach happened to be whatever. Long story. Great kid, and he wrote me a letter like the year after the story, just telling me, he was up in Buffalo or something with his girlfriend, and just telling me how his
Yeah.
life was going on. Like, that's the cool
Right.
part of it. It really is. And sometimes, look, not every, sometimes you write stories about idiots. That's part of the job
Yeah.
too. Um, but it was never about the games per se. It was, but it wasn't.
Right.
It was the stories within the games and things. And I think that's what people tend to remember, and then like 40 years worth of that, you get a lot of good
Yeah.
stories,
Yeah. I mean, you had a.
you
I
know.
mean,
But then again, you had a lot of cheeseburgers, room service cheeseburgers at midnight. After a while, that gets old. But
yeah. Well,
hey, I ate at some great places, man. Trust me, I judge my trips by how I eat.
which I would say that's a pretty good plan.
It's not a bad plan,
Never a bad plan.
especially when they're paying for it.
Even better. It
Yeah,
tastes even better.
on the company's dime was a good saying.
Yeah. But Mike, it was great having you on. I do remember as a kid watching you on the Daily News Live, I think, on TV on Comcast Sportsnet.
There you go. Yeah,
Uh,
we were on longer than MASH. Think about that.
yeah, I remember my dad always had it on, and I do like remember you on there, so it's pretty full circle to have you on. But I appreciate your time. I feel like we can probably go on for
No
hours
problem.
and hours about your whole golf knowledge. You've seen it all.
That's because I talk too much. That's my problem.
Well, you're not.
But we'll do this again. We'll do this again after Scotty Scheffler wins like two more majors.
Yeah, I'll have you on after like
We'll figure
the
that.
PGA or something. We can talk about anything. So, but Mike, appreciate your time, and we'll talk soon.
Okay.
See ya.
Good luck with
Thank
everything.
you.
Okay, babe.